All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Dan Hafner here, and I am joined with a guest today. Very interesting, special name, I think, because it's very similar to my wife's name. Weird way to start the show, but anyway, I'm joined by Jocelyn today. Jocelyn Houle. Thank you, Jocelyn. Welcome to the show. We're going to talk about, she's got a very interesting background. She's been a startup founder, works for some big companies. I believe she does angel investing. Like she's like the triple threat. She's got all kinds of stuff going on. Very interesting to have her here on the show. So I'm very, very honored to have all of you back listening to this. As always, if you have not already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or the podcast, wherever you are listening or watching. That is super, super helpful. Or if you find value from anything I add in this episode, Jocelyn adds in this episode, please be sure to share it with anyone. That is super, super appreciated. It really helps the show grow. So with that being said, welcome to the show, Jocelyn. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is going to be the highlight of my day. I can tell already.
Yes. Awesome. We were talking about a little bit before. We're both kind of in this like weird funk kind of thing right now with like the way life's going. But we're going to rally for the next like 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah.
We're going to have a hell of a show. We're going to kick the show's ass. So, So just give us the 30,000 foot view, Jocelyn, a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I have an unusual background in that I started out on the tech side, but I'm also been an operator and worked for some really large companies. And so that gives me kind of a special perspective across the board. And I guess the headline here is it gives me some empathy for the founders. So I have a really deep bench of founders that I work with, as well as empathy for that buyer in the really large scale enterprise. And so that turns out to be a useful kind of Google Translate for go-to-market, for a product roadmap. And as a result of that, I've been doing more investing as an angel. Today, I work with Security AI as a lead for their financial services work and a subject matter expert in their partnership world. And before that, I was an operating partner at Capital One Ventures, investing in all the same things: data, AI, governance, and infrastructure.
Wow. Yeah. So you've got quite a bit of experience there in a lot of different things. Very interesting. So before we dive into some of the stories I wanted to kind of talk about today with you, what has been one of the biggest trends in the challenges that you've seen kind of in this space over the past couple of years? I know like AI is the big elephant in the room and it's kind of changing everything fundamentally, but with people you work with founders, with investors, with whatever, like what's been like if you could give me like a secret thing that maybe a lot of people are missing, what's a challenge, what's something that like not a lot of people are paying attention to? I'm curious.
I think I can give you a product view and I can give you an investor view, right? From a product perspective, I love your question because who doesn't want to talk about AI? It's so exciting, but there's really like a humble cornerstone problem that industry has to solve. And that is, how do we locate and scrub and sanitize all the data that we have? This was always a problem. It was always a problem in the data world, especially unstructured data, things like transcripts from calls and videos. And we always wanted to use all that. And everyone's like, oh, so hard. We'll do it later. Well, then along comes AI. And it's like, well, now we need it all for real. And it's a non-deterministic system. Once we put this data in, we can never get it back. So if there's sensitive data, if your income is in there, it's going downstream somehow. So I think in enterprises that finding all the data and controlling it all was always a concern, but now it's really a front burner concern just to be able to leverage AI the way people want to. So that's kind of my product point of view. I'll pause there and then I'll tell you my founder point of view.
No, yeah, go ahead. I have a story that goes along with that very well. We're going to dive into that with
on the founder side. I would just say I think it's a tough time, and I am really impressed with the founders I meet who are pushing through the kind of basic tension, the basic question they're going to get, which is, why isn't OpenAI just going to do what you do? Right? Are you really AI-ifying a current process, or are you truly coming up with something new? This is a super hard question for founders right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. Let's actually dive down that. So like what is the answer to that?
Sure.
Come on, just give it to me. It should take you like 30 seconds, you know?
Yeah, and that's why I am a mogul. If I knew, right, I would definitely make all the bets. But I have a guess about it, only because I've been in this business so long, which is at the advent of when Java came out, and really changed the world, the chipset, because you could then write once, run anywhere. Well, that was super exciting. And those fundamental changes were great, but like no one was buying that. What they bought are the applications on top. And so, what I think is it's truly going to be a place where you are finding brand new workflows through AI. That's going to be the sweet spot for these founders. It's not just going to be like rub some AI on it on the current process, right? And I think there's no
That's right.
place where that's like more evident than in the innovation process for things like drugs or R&D for aerospace, right? Like we don't need to be using a straight through workflow anymore because AI can run 1,000 experiments at once. AI can use like a Darwinian algorithm to get rid of bad thought processes before they crop up and distract scientists. So there's just like it's not just a new way of doing things, it's a whole new thing.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, okay, yeah, I could go down a lot of routes with that, but we are on a time thing. So I want to cover some stories. So there's a very interesting story that I found recently that I kind of want to get your thoughts on because you mentioned this, like, when you feed information to the machine, it's kind of always there, which is not something that a lot of people have kind of realized. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on this story. Can you see my screen?
Hmm.
Okay. So here's a story I found. AI diagnostic tools falter in real world healthcare, raising safety and privacy concerns. So I did not share this with any with Jocelyn or anything before the. I'm just curious to get her thoughts. Artificial intelligence is rapidly transforming healthcare through tools such as diagnostic apps, clinical decision and support systems, and automated billing processes, promising enhanced efficiency and improved patient outcomes. However, experts caution that AI diagnostics can pose risks, including misdiagnosis due to flawed training data and limited real world validation, underscoring the need for careful evaluation and escalation protocols in patient facing AI systems. Additionally, healthcare providers face challenges integrating fragmented data into unified platforms, which hampers the full potential of AI applications like care plan development and member engagement. Meanwhile, the healthcare revenue cycle management sector is a significant operational cost driver is emerging as a major area for AI-driven automation to address inefficiencies in billing and claims and processes. Skip to the end. Overall, while AI offers substantial opportunities to optimize healthcare delivery and administrative workflows, addressing data quality, interoperability, and implementation challenges remains critical to realizing its benefits safely and effectively. When I read through that, what are your thoughts on that based on what we had just talked about?
I think it's such an interesting. This is where I have empathy for buyers or people who are trying to implement something like this because you can't wait. It's already happening. You've got tons of shadow AI. It's already being
Hmm.
like pushed into all your processes, whether you want it there or not. You cannot wait around for some pristine data or some moment where you're like, oh, we've got this covered. So it's really tough. You have to keep going. But there's a couple of initial reactions that I'd make. It's actually provably true that you can get better diagnostics from LLMs. They did a whole test with this recently. It was covered in the New York Times. The only time that the LLM came out wrong is when the doctor started prompting it with bias towards their own answers.
Imagine
So,
that.
yeah, because that's perfect, right? Because like this is what I think, and they don't want something. And you think about all the. So I think in terms of accuracy, I don't agree with it. I think accuracy can definitely. It depends on training data. But let me just kind of break this down, right? There's the fundamental model. OpenAI has a model, right? That's already trained up. Like you're not training that. That does its thing. You point it towards your own data. So what they're saying is we think our data is not useful. And I think that's definitely something that they should be thinking about, right? It's not really the AI. The data was bad before. So if you had like a doctor looking it up anywhere, it would already be bad.
Yeah.
Right? You've got the same problems you had yesterday. But now with AI, I think you're just letting yourself miss an opportunity to be even more accurate. And I just feel like I kind of don't like seeing articles like that. And I don't want to sound like just a maximalist. You think about all the people in rural areas, people who don't have access to healthcare or basic questions to get answered. You could really do a lot of good. And it has been proven that it's highly accurate. in diagnostics.
Well, I'm glad this is good. I love a show like, I don't want to just be like a confirmation bias kind of person. So I'm glad that we like, I picked something. I had no idea what your thoughts were going to be on this. So that's very interesting. And one thing that that you brought up that I had covered in my last show, was there was a story about, Sam Altman was talking about GPT-6 and what it might include and some of the different things. And one thing he alluded to was the possible ability to actually configure bias in the model for
But
yourself.
you have to. Yeah, you actually have to. Isn't that the answer? The remedy for bias is bias. in a way, right? Because you can only counterbalance it. And that's the thing with data. Like, you're never going to have pristine data. You're just going to get to a balancing point where you can live with it. You're never going to have like clean, no bias. So yeah, that's exactly right. And such an interesting comment. And that's what hallucinations are, part of why we feel like LLMs are thinking. Because it's a kind of a guess. A hallucination is a kind of guess or a wishful guess.
Yeah.
Humans do it all day.
I will say I've seen a lot less hallucinations. I don't know about you.
What? No, I feel like I'm struggling more than ever with ChatGPT. I'm on like the whatever premium ChatGPT 5, and it's driving me nuts.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, maybe you're just using it in a lot of different ways than I am, but I've seen less and less. I think I mean, I don't know, but I've been kind of using it in a bunch of different ways. But yeah, I mean, I just think overall that's because another story that comes to mind recently is all these different things around, people using LLMs for therapists.
Yes. Yeah, I want to come back to
that.
that actually, because it's interesting. I'm working with a founder right now. He's the founder of DX Composer. His name is Dmitry Krylov. It's very early stage. And he is working to create a diagnostic LLM that captures clinician expertise. So he's really focused on working with a clinician who does some kind of specialized cancer. And that's what they know about. So as you can imagine, over time, the training data gets better and better because working on one problem. And like, to me, I just give that example because I think it's a novel way of thinking about it. The article you read is like, well, we're going to point this thing in a body of data and it can only be as good as its inputs. That kind of linear thinking, I think, has to go out the window for AI.
Very good perspective. It's got me thinking differently too, because I've been kind of talking about that on the show here recently, and you kind of got me thinking a little bit differently about it.
But let's talk about this whole using it as therapy, because I definitely do that. I feel like Claude is my friend that I talk to. I mean, I know it's not.
It's like the movie Her.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Oh no, but it is, because it gets kind of scary at some level. If I think there was even one, don't get me wrong, don't quote me on this one, but I think there was a lawsuit happening about like like GPT actually had convinced a kid to actually commit suicide.
Yeah,
or
I'll actually
something.
give a plug for one of my favorite sources, which is Casey Newton from Platformer. This is not like a novel recommendation on my part. He's like super popular, but he just did one of his newsletters around these concerns and like how hard it is to address them, and how very serious they are. Because yeah, kids are there's like a complicated array of things that lead to a suicide, but this isn't helping.
But yeah, I think because what's the draw with it, right? It's always there. Like it's there might be somebody that's just very isolated, that just doesn't have people or friends on demand all the time, whereas it's always on your phone. It's going to respond as many times as you prompt it. It's always there. So the ease of access is already solved. It's always going to do that. But like you said, I think we've all experienced the confirmation bias that comes along with just, if you keep feeding this thing like, I am going down this dark, deep rabbit hole, it's I don't know. I've not done that myself, but like you said, I have used it to be like,
oh, you can only imagine what's going on. I use my analogy, which is like, my husband is like, so just something you have to know about me is I get into what I call my little healthy obsessions. So like for me, one right now is photography.
nice.
And so I might have, like, the regular person might have 5 to 7 questions about a particular lens, but I probably have 150. And also I want to know the history and the Newtonian physics. And like, I just have a lot of questions. Guess what? A normal person would be totally sick of me. But you can just continue to go back to the well and you do not get judged, which is pretty great. You don't get judged for being a dummy, right? Which is, I love, because you can ask dumb questions. I think if you're sort of circling the drain, though, it turns into like a worry stone. And if you were talking to a human, there would be like a stopping point, so you're absolutely right in that, like, having something that's not only a sycophantic and feeding you back what you want to hear, but it's like always on, may not be the most positive thing. Because as humans, even the best therapist will be like, okay, let's settle down for today. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really conflicted about it because the flip side for me is like CBT is not that hard. I don't know. Have you ever been to therapy? Let me ask you that.
A couple of times in my life. I've
Yeah.
never really. I should do it probably, but no, I've only done it a couple of times. Yeah.
Like, behavioral therapy, I don't know. A lot of it's like stuff you already know. You just have to be reminded
Yeah.
because you're amped up. You
Yeah.
know? So I wonder if like there's a lot of people out there who super benefit from just a little reminder like, hey, feelings don't last, or you may have overblown this.
Hmm.
Maybe they would really benefit in their lives from that. So there just seem to be two like really mm, bookends of this, like sort of this, very,
I don't
acceptable
know.
kind of CBT, but then also these dark corners.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't do therapy, but one thing I do is a lot of like introspection. So what
Uh-huh.
my process usually ends up being is just kind of like typing out a lot of things, like really just like not even handwriting anymore, but just like really like dumping out all of my thoughts, whether they're good, bad, happy, sad, angry, whatever. And then literally taking those and then uploading them into GPT and being like, what do you think of this?
People do that. Yeah,
And
how's that
seeing
experience? I
and
haven't tried it.
it's actually, I think I like that a lot better because it's it can obviously pull things out of it and it can kind of give different perspectives and things like that. But I think the confirmation bias is still
Yeah,
very,
it
very
never tells you
strong with
something.
it.
Has it ever told you something where you're like, "Ooh, I hate hearing that," but that's probably true?
Very rarely, very, very I think like once ever.
I
So
I like people to tell me, you know what I mean? You need somebody who's like, "Your head is up your butt on
yeah,
this."
sometimes you just need that,
So yeah,
It's
I don't
just
know. What do you think the answer is? I mean, the current discussion is there some sort of like emergency brake where, OpenAI calls the authorities? I think if that was there, people wouldn't use it in this way.
probably not. Probably
It
not.
would just go,
Anyway, yeah, very,
yeah.
very interesting topic. I want to move on to the next one, but there's that was a very interesting conversation. A lot of different things to think about there. Okay, so the other story I wanted to talk to you about. You're big into agentic AI, right? Like AI
Mhm.
agents, that kind of stuff, right? As well.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, so let me pull this story up. So there is a story that I thought was very interesting when I saw we are going to have you on here, and it's about the adoption across Asia Pacific enterprises of
Hmm.
agentic AI.
I
Very
haven't
interesting.
seen
So
this.
agentic AI adoption accelerates across Asia Pacific enterprises. Agentic AI is rapidly becoming a transformative force in business operations across multiple regions, shifting focus from traditional automation to autonomous decision making. In the Asia Pacific and Japan markets, nearly 90% of organizations are expected to adopt agentic AI by 2026, driven by its ability to handle complex situations independently and enhance productivity and innovation. Similarly, in corporate internal communications, agentic AI is seen as a critical growth driver, enabling precise and autonomous communication strategies that improve employee engagement and customer loyalty. In South Africa, AI Ops, a form of AI enhanced IT operations automation, is gaining traction as businesses seek to manage complex infrastructures efficiently and reduce manual intervention. The adoption of these AI technologies underscores a broader trend of leveraging intelligent, independent agents to optimize business processes and decision making at scale, promising significant improvements in profitability, productivity, and competitive advantage.
Ooh, that's
So,
so interesting.
what do you think of them apples?
Yeah, my first thought is actually so at a macro level, these are countries that are full of much younger people and they digitized later than than the US, like fully
Why do you think?
digitizing. Think
Why do you
about
think
like,
that is?
oh, there's like economic reasons, right? You got China, China kind of blasted forward out of like the doldrums of the 80s and they've always been good at manufacturing, but they're getting like they had the ability to digitize like one generation after us, I think, right? And certainly in Africa, like that's just a booming area of like super smart young people, and they're just building their infrastructure now. So I think there's a lot less friction than if you're trying to put an agentic AI into, say, some giant bank somewhere. Cap One is really strong in this because I work there, and like they're very forward thinking, a lot of greenfields development. But think about like like a bigger, older bank with like multiple like old. There's still mainframes in the basement, right? And so I think it's harder to get agentic to work because it's got to be able to talk across all of these systems. So the first thing I just thought is like you got a lot of more younger people, and you got maybe a little bit less friction in the system to let those agents really get out there and fly without the same concerns around permissions and data that we have here because we have a lot of legacy systems. Just my initial thought when you read that to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it this way. So this is how I process. Like, I think, I mean, I just covered this a little while ago. I think a show or two ago is like this kind of AI bubble kind of thing, and
Mm.
that's like a financial conversation. We're talking more about a technical adoption, but is it always the best idea to jump on the new
Oh,
things
yeah.
too fast? Like, that's my question, just to play devil's advocate.
I'm
Is
going
it
to
a
stop you
good?
right now and just say I think all this is there's going to be a major contraction on all of these AI projects coming soon. I think everyone got super excited, and all the bros in Silicon Valley were like, "Oh, if it can code, it can certainly do everyone else's. If it can do my job, it can do anyone's job." And guess what? It can't, because other people's jobs are hard and have like weird, mysterious processes. It's not all documented on the web. So I actually do think people are, and there was just an MIT research that came out, which I also think is too extreme, saying like all 95% of AI projects are failing. I don't know if that's correct. That's certainly not what I'm seeing in the field, but I do think there's a kind of an inhalation coming where people are going to kind of say like, oh, you know what? We can't transform our entire business in a year.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I've covered this several times around the sheer amount of money that's just been thrown at like
Oh,
some of these companies, just like it's clearly not sustainable. Like, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but even I can see like, okay, there's no way this kind of thing
Dan,
can sustain itself,
I'm sad. We missed the gold rush. Why didn't we not do a startup 6 months ago and get our like 20 mil? Because I think that window is closing. So it's all good and well for us to comment on it, but we missed our window. We should have gotten our cash.
Yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely true. It's gotten out of control. And actually, just look at the numbers. I think this is actually great for product managers and buyers out there. A lot of organizations are like, hey, we're going to AIify our call center. And if you just compare the numbers of having like really senior, great people on the phone and how great that is for your business, even the expensive ones, let's just take it like you're going to spend too much money on customer service. It's like dwarfed by your bill for GPUs.
Right, but does it at an enterprise level, doesn't that become just that much more risky? Because it's not like you're just operating like someone like me who's like, solo with one or two people. You're talking about enterprise level stuff. Like I used to work for Deloitte. Like I
Oh,
was one,
right. Saw that.
so like when there was change requests that had to be done. Like there were things of like, hey, if we're changing this tiny little thing in a database somewhere, it has to go through like 14 people in order to be like done. So, but
Hmm.
like, does that just magnify the risk that much more when you want to adopt things like this?
Yeah, I completely think so. I forgot about your Deloitte background because that's the kind of like weird stuff in enterprise that I think people are not thinking about when they're like, hey, we'll just like, slap an agent on this thing. In enterprise, right? That agent's going to have a mother may I through like 14 different systems, and it can't break anybody, and it can't like, be out of alignment with regulatory for some, there's just so many. I think people don't understand. Michael Lewis wrote that the fifth risk book, which is kind of like there's just heavy friction in these systems already. So it's not going to be a situation where you can just come in and say like, oh, let's just put AI on it. It's not going to work.
So do you think that like, do you think that more disruptive type of technology is really easier to come from smaller companies then?
I think I personally, and I did I was on another podcast where we were doing cyber for like small and mid-sized business. Small and mid-sized has the most to gain here because they can't afford Deloitte and they can't build their own software because they're like in like maritime supply chain or something, right? They're not software people, but now maybe they can be, right? They can start automating and leapfrog all the people who could buy SAP and Salesforce and all that stuff, right? So they have the most to gain, and I think most controls, and they're in like greenfields development because it's like one line of business, 15 lines of business. It's not 100 different lines of business. And so I think they have the most to gain on this. Absolutely. And, I think Deloitte, Accenture, all of these custom builders will have a ton of work, because what's going to happen is they're going to come in and say, oh, you know what? We can't just AIify customer service. We have to rethink the whole thing. That's what kind of my big message is you can't just take the waterfall that you have now and plug AI in.
Waterfall. Oh man, now you're as a developer, you're talking like, that's.
But
like
think about it from a process
curse word.
perspective, Dan. Like if you did process re-engineering, we always sort of start with like, here's the left side of the architecture, and we kind of go over to the right, and there's an outcome. And like AI just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like I remember the path of entrepreneurship, like meme. Remember that? It was like it's like this, and then down, and then over, and then over like this. And I feel like AI can kind of be like that, at least like LLMs kind of in a way, but they're also like you said, they've kind of eliminated that in some ways, and they can kind of at least go straight. You know what I mean?
They don't have to show their work. It's like doing math problems. Right? There's some people who can just do math in their head and they're like, boop, here's the answer. That is not me. I have to do like multiple lines of writing it out. And so many processes in enterprise are just like these linear processes. And what people are doing is they're like, oh, let's pick out one of these linear processes and AIify it. That is not going to be worth the time and effort in GPUs. What you want to do is you want to pop out all of those pieces and say, like, how can we just say the math answer, right? How can we just get straight to it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so one thing, tell me if I'm wrong in this approach. So one thing that I've kind of identified for myself, and also I've told some of my clients that I've worked with is, when you get to a point when you want to use AI, when you want to scale, when you want to maybe even delegate or automate some things, the way that I've always seen it is there's a process of me identifying, okay, I'm the bottleneck here. And this is something that I find I'm coming back to again and again and again. And it's just really annoying me or slowing me down or something like that. So the process becomes, okay, how do I either automate this, eliminate it, or delegate it, right? And that becomes like what you term like the AIify process of like, how can I maybe use AI to automate this or do that kind of thing? Is that wrong thinking, or is that, I mean, at least for someone in my shoes, maybe, but that might be different at an enterprise level.
I love what you're saying. No, I love what you're saying. I think in terms of a tools perspective or productivity perspective, sure, absolutely. In terms of the kind of money, the spend, when you're talking like these huge budgets coming down, so I guess my question to you would be, is AI an Excel spreadsheet or is it the PC? Like because that's where I feel like I'm hoping it's the PC, because if it's an Excel spreadsheet, then yeah, definitely a lot of these founders are going to go out of business.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the things I find myself kind of talking over with people a lot with is everyone kind of has been sold this idea of, especially so the vibe coding tools I think are something I come back to again and again and again. It's like build your app in a weekend.
Do you do that? Have you done that vibe coding? Can I ask?
Yes, I've done a lot of it. I've done a lot of it. So I've used a bunch of different tools, such like Lovable, all kinds of different ones. And I've lots of thoughts on them. You could actually probably listen to some of my old...
I should have stalked you beforehand, but all I can say is I do a bit of it, and it doesn't always work.
It doesn't always work. That's basically, I'll save you the time. That it doesn't always work, but the problem I see is that people have started to believe that it does always work, and then hey, I have this super cool idea to just fuse all these financial tools together and see it all in one dashboard, and it just works. And it's like, well, I mean, that's hard to do with custom coding, let alone like a tool where you're just prompting it. Like, what are you talking about?
What are we really talking about? I know. I asked the same question. I'm like, what outcome are you really expecting to have happen here? In business, I should say in business, something like, are we finding a new like folding proteins? Okay, well, that's a different thing for AI. But in business applications, yeah, I feel like, and I'm going to start a pact right here with you. You ready? This is our new movement that we're going to start on the internet, which is all of this breathless AI reporting on YouTube has to stop.
What am I going to talk about on my show, Jocelyn?
We can talk about it, but everyone's like, oh my gosh, everyone's not going to have a job in 5 minutes. And okay, like I'm a maximalist. I agree. but it's not going to be. I just think everyone has to like settle the tone down and settle like this sort of magic trick talk. I guess that's what you're getting at is like
Well,
it's not a magic trick.
yeah, I will say I have been on that bandwagon as well. I do. I have fallen down. I've processed this through some of the stories I've done on here before. That I do not see the entire world changing by 2026. I just really I can't see it. Like and vibe coding tools has been one of the things that has convinced me of that. Like, okay, just because I can go in and type something and I can get a pretty good product, but I can still like I know that if this thing can't just build something super simple that's like something else I could do by myself, like the way they say it can be done, I personally am not convinced that super artificial general intelligence is right on the horizon.
Let me just
Sorry,
like
I
no,
know
it's
everyone
not.
has access to different levels of it, but I'm just kind of like I remain to be convinced.
There are times when you're interacting with it and you're like you get a glimpse of something and you're like, whoa, right?
Yes.
And that's a cool moment because it gives you a quick sort of insight on where we might be going. But I'm going to give a history lesson now, based on my personal experience, which I'm it's a little young for this, but basically, this is from when I worked at Microsoft as a product manager on the Office team, and I had the opportunity to work with Rich Tong, who came from Lotus 123 and is kind of credited for making Excel great. And so, couple of things when then like, okay, 20 years pass, and then I show up. And like the thing about Excel is that by that time it's just a monster. It can do anything. I don't know if you're an Excel person, but it's super rich. And like 90% of the features are accessed by 8% of the users. Like they keep saying, oh, it's a PhD level. My job's not that PhD if you really have to know. I mean, I like people to think I'm smart, but the reality is I don't know how much of a PhD student I need. The dumb intern has been pretty handy.
Yeah.
Unless I'm doing science, or something like that. So I guess where I'm going with this is like I think people need to settle down on the breathlessness around, what's happened. Sky is falling or the world's changing so dramatically. It will change dramatically. I think it's going to be a like 5 to 10 year event horizon though.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think I mean it's exciting for someone like me. It was funny because I was actually just playing around with ChatGPT the other day and I actually asked it, I said, how many people do you think have actually used the vibe coding tools out there? It was like this many. It was like very, very small. And I was like, huh, okay. But again, that's I'm in this world every single day.
That's what
To
you have to be
me,
careful of.
yeah, to me, I'm just like, I missed the boat. I missed the boat on this. And then I
Totally.
take a step back and I'm like, holy crap, I'm like one of the first people in here relative in the world, you know? And that's incredibly exciting.
It's
Like,
totally exciting. Yeah,
yeah,
I actually suffer from this quite a bit in my content generation. I'm like, everybody already knows this thing. And
wow, very good point.
it's not the case, right? Not everybody knows whatever that is. It's just because you're in your own little bubble. And I think San Francisco in particular is its own bubble. Like it's really, really out of touch. And I heard a stat the other day, which I have not fact checked for this discussion, but I think came from a good source, which is something like online commerce, shopping on Amazon is responsible for 30% of all retail in the US. It's not right. People shop in stores,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know about you, but we have like Amazon showing up every 4 to 7 hours here.
Yeah, for sure.
So I do think it's like that is actually a great point of view to bring up with you when you're thinking about AI. And I actually would just shift the conversation a little bit. I don't know if you've done other shows on this. Which is like the way you think about things has to change when you're using AI because you have to be more skeptical. You have to do more fact checking. So in a way, this is just I'm using your comment as a pivot. Just like that's what I've noticed in my own workflow is that in the old, like I used to be like, oh, just make sure all your inputs are great data, great sources, good ideas, and I'd spend 80% of my time on that and 20% on fact checking and proofing. Now
Yeah.
it's the reverse.
Yeah. And I kind of alluded to this in my last episode, but and I'll tell it to you guys again, still listening. I've been working on my very first book.
Oh,
Um,
how's that
trying
going?
to finally be a published author. It's going, but I have also been leaning heavily on ChatGPT to pull it off. And that was kind of my experiment was can I use this tool to basically write my first and publish my first book? Which is interesting because you actually have to, when you go on Amazon, you have to actually say, I did use AI to create this
Yeah,
and
that makes
edit some
sense.
things with it. But it was funny because I got the first draft of it done, and then I read through it, and I'm like, there are like some major plot holes in this book right now. I'm like, wait a second. These characters met in chapter 1, and then in chapter 5, they're meeting for the first time. And I'm like, okay, let's go back here.
Right? And my mind is not really trained in that anymore, in that way to like check
Yeah.
for like basic chunks like that. And I don't know about this is a side note, like I read it the first draft, I'm like, this is great. Done. Send it. And like I've really learned to like settle, like let it settle and like really double check it for just the kind of things you're talking about there. So definitely I've had to sort of switch my cognitive process.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that just kind of brings it full circle back to that agentic AI conversation. Like one thing I've talked about with a lot of people on the show is like you can't scale what doesn't work, and when you're in the kind of that MVP stage, why what is going on? Why try to scale something if it's not first working? And agentic AI is like the gasoline to a lot of things. And if you're plugging that into something, like you better be buckled up. Like that thing's gonna work.
Totally.
Like
Totally.
and if it's broken and if it's not like you said, like if you're not like, giving it time to marinate and think on some things, like buckle up, baby. You got some rocket fuel in that car because like that thing's getting hooked up and it's taking off whether you like it or not, you know?
It is, yeah, and you're not gonna be able to retrieve it in the same way straight through processing works, right, for data or
Yeah.
straight through processing works. But I will just say this, I do think, and I wrote a spicy article about this on LinkedIn, like, what we think of as enterprise software has gotta go away. Like, we were very limited in the early days of software. When we built, like I was one of the first users of Salesforce.com, right? When we first built that, like, it's limited because of the machine. We had a web browser that was kinda wonky, and you couldn't create a Salesforce for banking and a Salesforce for chemical engineering because we had to do something generic. They worked everywhere. Well, now with agents, we don't have to do that anymore. In fact, if you know really well how to run your chemical engineering plant, you can build your own Salesforce, right? Very, very easily now. And it'll be better because it'll be rich with your particular customer information. So I do agree with Satya Nadella, who's been talking about kind of the demise of enterprise software. And that's where I do think like Accenture and Deloitte will get a lot of business. People will build their own, probably two generations, one that's terrible and one that works. And there will be a lot of advantage available to these companies. And I think we'll see some big companies maybe get kicked out. My bet is something along the lines of an SAP or Salesforce first. Like what software, in your opinion, do people enterprise hate the most? I'm trying to think.
Well, I
Active
know
Directory.
there was one that was absolutely despised when I worked there, and it was called Remedy.
Oh, yes. People that makes them very
It
itchy.
it made people want to projectile vomit. I remember, like it
And
was.
by the way, Remedy product managers, I'm sure it all was meant to go well, but it could be implementation. I don't know why, but that is true. A lot of companies, like the people who use it, are very uncomfortable with it. Yeah, so things like that. I mean, ticketing systems, some of the like I think ServiceNow has a great play because like people don't want to build that. It doesn't, but maybe they do. Maybe there's something about ticketing that will improve with your particular company info.
Yeah, and you say, companies like Deloitte will get a lot of business. I think companies like Dapper No Code might get a lot of business too,
Yes,
because
let's
if you're
hope so.
trying to build some stuff, we got all the stuff. We even got our own vibe coding tool and everything, Jocelyn. Like we're set.
Well, I will give you
We're
a plug
set
and
up.
just say over the years, I've worked with a lot of like disruptive technologies, and it's interesting. The incumbents often are very slow to really adopt it and wield it. That's like my first startup. We were Oracle Linux Stack, like one of the first ones. And it gave us a ton of advantage because even though big companies like McKinsey and others wanted to talk about it and use it, like they just weren't immersed in it enough. So, young companies, smaller companies that are really on the not bleeding edge, but cutting edge can get work at really big enterprise implementations because they have a lot of value to add.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's exciting. That's exciting. All right. Well, it was very nice having you on today. This was a very very fun conversation. It kind of went a lot of ways I didn't think it was going to go, but this was really cool.
I love your format. I hope it was a useful format. I have not seen enough of your show, but I love the news format. I think it's great.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's actually been very popular. I think a lot of people do appreciate it. So that's awesome. That's good to see. So where can we connect with you?
Yeah, so soon we're going to be rolling out the new. Today I host Software Engineering Daily. Definitely check that out. But we're rolling out a new podcast called Building the Impossible, focused on scientific founders in deep tech, like aerospace, defense tech. So please check that out by coming to my website, jocelynhoule.com.
That sounds like a very interesting podcast, Building the Impossible. That's exciting. I'm gonna have to listen
It's
to
actually
that.
kind of a labor of love for me because I just, how do these people come up with these moonshot ideas and get them
Yeah.
out of the lab and into the real world? I think it's fascinating.
That is. I'll have to check that out. That's very cool. All right. So we'll put the link for you guys here in the show notes there to check that out and connect with Jocelyn if you so choose to. So thank you so much, Jocelyn, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. This was very entertaining, very fun.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Absolutely. All right, guys, that is all for today's episode. Appreciate all of you again. Please check that out. The link will be in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe and like the show as well. We really appreciate when you do that. All right, guys, we will see you next week. Have a good one.
Thanks for tuning in to Tech Bites, your go-to show for software business and technology. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with our latest episodes, insights, and stories. Hungry for more? Dive deeper into the world of no-code by visiting dapanacode.com. Your journey to building amazing software without coding skills starts there. Connect with like-minded creators and unlock a world of resources tailored just for you. Subscribe now. Explore Dapa.